folks. Max Gomez here. I had prepared some videos to speak about communism and to let people in America know what communism is like. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because Joe Biden's in the White House. Now, Joe Biden may not be really the guy who's leading this whole thing. I personally don't believe that Joe Biden is smart enough to run an outhouse operation, okay? Much less be president of the United States. The real dangerous individuals that are running this country don't show their faces, okay? And that is the insidiousness of this. That is the danger of this, because when they finally reveal themselves, when they finally come out of their hiding place, it's going to be too late for you to do anything about it. That's why I keep saying that if you're going to change your country to a democratic, constitutional, representative government again, you have to do it now, okay? Because when the real people who are running this tyrannical government, when they really show their faces, it's going to be too late to do anything about it. Because you will already be in chains, my friends, okay? Now, I had made some videos, but I took them down because I wasn't really satisfied with them. You know, we can talk about philosophy of communism, you know, and how the ultimate goal of communism is the so-called common ownership of the means of production and the absence of the social classes and all that nonsense. That's just nonsense that they want you to hear and believe. But in reality, the thing is that the utopian philosophy of communism is worlds apart from the reality once communism has taken control of the masses. In the practical implementation of the communist system, there is no such thing as the common ownership of anything by the proletariat, or rather the common citizen on the lowest rungs of society. The common people don't share ownership of anything but their common poverty and classless study. They don't even share a common humanity because they are just considered chattel to their masters. Okay? They don't share money because their former wealth has been absorbed or confiscated by the state. You know, I had an uncle who had a cattle ranch. He ran a milking operation. He had cows, milk cows, and he had a pretty nice ranch. And one day the communists came over to his house and said, "Are you such and such?" And he said, "Yes, that's me." He says, "This is your place?" And he says, "Yeah, I own this place." And the communist guy said, "Not anymore, you know. You can run it, but everything in here belongs to the state." How would you like somebody to come to your house and tell you you don't own your house anymore? That you don't own your land anymore? That all the property on your land now belongs to the state? How would you like that to happen? Well, if you keep permitting your presidents and your senators and your legislatures and your courts to do what they want, one day they're going to do that, just like they did in Cuba. And finally, we don't have any say in a communist society. Citizens don't have any say with the state. They don't have any place to go to redress their complaints, and because nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to care what you're complaining about. You may probably end up in jail or get shot. That's the best you could hope for in a communist state when you try to complain about anything. The best way to speak about communism is just to describe it from the practical experience, from someone who's actually lived it and been there. And that's me. You know, when we left Cuba, I was just turning 9 years old. And for the previous 3 years before we came to America, I was exposed to all the horrors uh, of the communist regime. I was there when they came to our house at night, in the middle of the night with torches, trying to compel us to come out. I was there when my uncle was dragged from the arms of his loved ones and taken out to a field 14 kilometers out of town with his brother-in-law and his father-in-law and 16 other men, and machine gunned to death and shoved into a shallow trench and covered over without ceremony or anything. I was there when we were running down the street, running for our lives in the dark, trying to get away from the militiamen, the rebel, what they called los milicianos, right? The communist militia, the secret police, with my hand in my mother's hand, running to get away. I was there when I looked into the faces of my prepubescent cousins as they lay in their coffins, shot to death. I looked into the faces of more dead people looking at me from their coffins than any child should ever have to. These were the things that were imprinted into my psyche as a child. I can look back at my life and say I never had a childhood. That I was forced to experience things that no child should ever have to experience. Not only I, but my brothers, my father and his family. My father lost his youngest brother to a firing squad. He lost another to 5 years of imprisonment in a concentration camp. By the time my dad left Cuba with the rest of us, he was a broken, shattered man, a shadow of his former self. And it took years to bring him back, years, before he was finally able to once again enjoy his life and be happy. So what is communism about? Well, I can tell you from the beginning what happened. In January, the 1st of January, the first day of January, New Year's Day, 1959, Fidel Castro came down from his mountain hideout with the help of the mainstream media announcing his arrival all the way. You know, the mainstream media helped Fidel broadcast his message of hope and change to our country. They helped him broadcast his message all across the island. Can you imagine that? You know where most of those guys are today, those guys that helped Fidel? They're in Miami. Because it didn't turn out the way they thought it was. You know. But anyway, Fidel came down from that mountain hideaway. And as he went across the island down the Central Highway, he left a contingent of his forces there to take over the operations of each town as he went through. And when he came through our town, he left a man in charge who had been my uncle's former boss, the regional director of academics in the province. That was the most remote province of the same place where Castro was hiding up there. And things got so dangerous that one day this regional director disappeared, you know. And my uncle decided, the teachers there in that region decided that it was getting too dangerous for them. So each one of them returned to their hometown and they looked for employment there locally in their hometown. Well, my uncle came back to our town, and when Castro drove by on the Central Highway there, and he left a contingent of his forces in our hometown to take over the operation of our city. It was the regional director of academics that was the boss of my uncle Nestor who took over.